welcome to my humble abode of a channel that I am slowly but surely resurrecting from the ashes. Today's video marks a new series that we'll be welcoming to the channel called Character Consultations. So in said series, we're going to be doing deep dives into our favorite, beloved characters via character analysis, because here we cannot consume our media to a normal degree. Onwards. So given a recent binge of all the Spider-Man movies that I did with my friend, shout out to Sakani, check out his YouTube channel, and the release of quite possibly the most stunning Spider-Man movie in all of existence, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, it only felt natural that our first victim character for this series be the man, the myth, the legend, Peter Parker. Today we'll be exploring the motives of not one, not two, not three, but 4 different adaptations of Peter. So let's get into it. First up, we have Peter Parker. Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker. Now, whether you're a fan of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man franchise or not, I think everyone could agree that these films are nostalgic and foundational to every Spider-Man film following it. Tobey's Peter was not only my introduction to Spider-Man, but my introduction to superhero movies. It was from that moment that Anisha, aged 5, would name Spider-Man to be her favorite superhero of all time. And that declaration has stood the test of time, my friends. The test of time of 20 years. I digress. This fast-paced and comical rendition of films revolves around a simple-minded Peter Parker. His one and only aim, as he so adequately states at the beginning of his story, is to get the girl. His plight has always revolved around impressing Mary Jane, trying to be seen by her, trying to be enough for her, trying to be with her. Many a time his moral compass almost feels like it's being directed by his feelings towards her. And in this way, many can argue that Tobey's Peter can fall quite flat and two-dimensional in comparison, but I believe this changes as he faces his many villains and confronts this baked-in dilemma that every Spider-Man seems to face, which is, can they have it all? Mary Jane serves as a sort of glimmer of hope for Peter, which is why I think the third film in this franchise is particularly interesting, because he finally seems to have it all together for once, and then it's just torn down again, in part by his own doing. So all this to say, Peter Parker presented in this world is quite formulaic in a sense. While live action, these films seem to bend closer to that depicted in a comic book, which can be fun artistically, as shown through its flashy transitions and cheesy dialogue, which the actors do a really good job of presenting. But all in all, it can also lack in depth. All this to say though, I think that Tobey's Peter is such a classic and revered because, as stated before, they are foundational and nostalgic. The blueprint to which all Spider-Man movies look back to in fondness as they run their own journey. Quite simply put, Tobey's Peter walked so the rest of them could run. Now, on to our second and maybe most controversial retelling of Peter, Andrew Garfield's Peter.
Uh-oh, somebody's been a bad lizard.
Before No Way Home was released, Andrew's Peter Parker received nothing but slack from the general consensus of viewers. At the time in which those movies were released, however, I was still fairly young, maybe like 13, and I did not have any qualms with these movies. I thought he was cute. I thought his chemistry with Gwen was phenomenal, and I was overall satisfied. I was just happy that, you know, I got to dive into the world of Spider-Man again. But it wasn't until I recently watched these films again that I kind of registered why these films may not have been received as well. But don't get it twisted, I am not a hater, okay? I still enjoy those movies for what they are, especially the way that Andrew breathes life into Peter. So for starters, and perhaps the biggest difference in this rendition of Peter Parker, is that we get backstory. Like, we see Peter's childhood flashbacks, and In that way, the story in these films and the motives behind Andrew's Peter goes so much more farther than getting bit by a radioactive spider and wanting to get the girl. Andrew's Peter is not the stereotypical awkward nerd. He's, I don't know, he's serving angst. Instead of becoming Spider-Man being a mere happenstance, it almost feels like in these films it was like fate. It was intentional. So we come to learn in these movies that Peter's dad was a scientist working at Oscorp, studying cross-species genetics with Dr. Connors, who is the lizard, who is Spider-Man's nemesis in the first film. They both were working to find a cure for Oscorp manager, higher up, CEO, I don't know his title, but anyway, Norman Osborn, who is dealing with the cruel fate of the Green Goblin disease, which is passed on to his son, Harry, who is Peter's ex-bestie in the second film. How Oscorp has not had multiple lawsuits and gone under is beyond me. But anyways, all this to say, it kind of feels like Peter is left to tie up all the loose ends that his father started. As he comes to learn more about his father's secretive past, it feels like he's also learning more of how to step into his role as Spider-Man. Now, between his parents abandoning him at a really young age and the passing of Uncle Ben, I am willing to give Andrew's Peter's reckless nature a pass. That is, until it comes to Gwen. Unlike Mary Jane and Tobey's Spider-Man, who seems to fall more for Spider-Man than Peter Parker, in these films, Gwen falls for Peter Parker and not Spider-Man. And in this way, maybe this prepared Mary Jane to endure whatever dangers that Spider-Man would get into, but Gwen didn't necessarily choose that for herself. She just gets involved because of her love for Peter. While they are so cute together, Peter is selfish and impulsive in a way that constantly puts Gwen in jeopardy. We see this in the way he quite literally drags her into his world, knowing it would endanger her the minute that he confesses he's Spider-Man to her. He doesn't even give her time to process and kisses all of her questions away. He knows engaging in this relationship, if her dad found out that he's Spider-Man, would endanger her and her dad's relationship and get her in trouble. But he does it anyway. In the end, when Gwen's dad asks Peter to not involve Gwen, he does it anyway. All of this is tragic when keeping in mind Gwen's eventual demise in the second film. This brings up another common notion that seems to come up in all the Spider-Man films, which is that you can't always save everyone. Do y'all hear an ice cream truck? Anyways, I will say his comeback / redemption arc in No Way Home, it's all the more sweeter because he is able to process all this guilt that he feels through the closure that he gets in that film. That and self-deprecating humor, which is so relatable and probably why he was a standout character and a highlight in a film that featured 2 other Spider-Man. So with that, let's move on to Tom Holland's Peter Parker.
Underoos!
So, Tom's Peter's introduction as an overly eager high school student desperate to prove himself in Captain America Civil War would be a preambulatory theme for Tom's Peter throughout the course of all the films that he is featured in. It isn't until after Avengers Endgame in Spider-Man Far From Home where we actually see this youthful, naive persona of Tom's Peter shift, mostly due to the passing of his mentor, Iron Man. Once scoffing at this title of being the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, now Peter so desperately wants nothing more than to be just that. He literally tries to leave his suit at home when traveling to Europe, and May slips it back into his suitcase. Peter at this point wants nothing more than a vacation and to pursue a relationship with MJ. But as he comes to learn in this film and in No Way Home, is the infamous lesson that with great power comes great responsibility. You didn't think I was gonna make it through this video without slipping that in, did you? So I actually feel like this quote and the struggle that Peter is going through perfectly marries the two aforementioned warranties that comes with being Spider-Man, that you may or may not be able to have it all and that you can't always save everybody. Peter's identity being exposed at the end of Far From Home and in No Way Home quite literally forces him to confront his own apprehension and dilemma of grappling with being Spider-Man while also trying to lead a normal life. Perhaps Thomas Peter's greatest advantage, though, is that he has a support system between Ned and MJ and May and Tony and Happy and literally all of the other superheroes in the MCU. There's some sort of solace in knowing that he doesn't have to really carry all this burden alone. But also knowing Peter's fate in No Way Home, it's sort of a bittersweet advantage because by the end, he has lost all who has kept him grounded in the first place. And in a way, Peter Parker has somewhat died by the end of that film, and only Spider-Man is left to live on. But knowing there's a fourth Tom Holland Spider-Man movie coming up, perhaps there is hope for Tom's Peter yet. Lastly, but certainly not leastly, I wanted to talk about Jake Johnson's Peter B. Parker from the Miles Morales Spider-Man films.
My name is Peter B. Parker. I was bitten by a radioactive spider, and for the last 22 years, I thought I was the one and only Spider-Man. What a day. I'm pretty sure you know the rest. You see, I saved the city, fell in love, I got married, saved the city some more, maybe too much. My marriage got testy, made some dicey money choices, don't invest in a spider-themed restaurant. Then like 15 years passed, blah, 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 super bummed. I broke my back, a drone flew into my face. I buried Aunt May, my wife and I split up. But I handled it like a champion.
First of all, can we talk about the perfect casting? Yes. Peter B. Parker just has such a special place in my heart. In this collection of films, we see Peter as a whole adult. In all the prior films, I feel like Peter at his oldest was depicted as maybe like a college student. But in this movie, Peter is definitely in his late 20s or early 30s, and man has he gone through life. Peter B is introduced to the audience as the janky old broke Spider-Man, as Miles states, and he is lamenting over his past life decisions. He definitely does not want kids, and he definitely does not want to be Miles' mentor. Because of his failed relationship with this universe's or his universe's MJ, I personally don't think he just didn't want to have kids or be Miles' mentor, but that he was scared because he didn't think that he was ready to, and he didn't want to mess it up. I think this is in part why Peter's able to understand all of Miles' anxieties and how overwhelmed he feels, because he himself knows what it's like to let the people around him down. Through coaching Miles, in a way, he begins to experience a fraction of the joy that comes with fatherhood. And later in the film, when Miles isn't ready yet to take on this role of Spider-Man, Peter experiences the side of parenthood of what it means to protect and sacrifice when he himself decides that he would be the one to shut down the collider instead of Miles. In the end, though, when Miles is ready and encourages Peter to go back to his own world, we actually see Peter holding on to Miles, and he asks, "How do I know that I'm not going to mess it up again?" which not only proves that in the end that he needed Miles just as much as Miles needed him, but also that he needed to take his own leap of faith, just like he had told Miles prior. Not to get too into the story of Across the Spider-Verse, but clearly through the trailers we see that Peter B is able to make things work with MJ and that he has a child of his own, Mayday Parker. So I'm so happy for him. So that about concludes our somewhat brief character analysis into the many different versions of Peter Parker throughout all the universes. We are able to come to love and appreciate how he, a superhero at his core, is just as human and flawed as the rest of us. And yet he chooses to get back up again, which is also another valuable lesson that we learn from all the Spider-Man movies. Hooray for perseverance! I hope you enjoyed this video and look forward to more videos like this in the future. If you're a Spider-Man fan, let me know who your favorite Peter Parker is and which Peter Parker you resonate the most with. And also, if you have not seen Across the Spider-Verse, you definitely should go do that. Like now, like right now, like go do it because it's so good. So yeah, that's all from me for now. I will catch you on the flip side, and yeah, love you, bye.